everyone, it's the Ultra Healthy Video Game Nerd. I'm back with another episode. This is a really exciting time for retro gaming right now, and I'm really enthusiastic to doing this video because, as it turns out, there has been a newly released Super Famicom game. Yes, a Super Nintendo game, a brand new one, and I've got it right here in my hands. It's Shubibinman Zero. What, you say? A new Super Nintendo game in 2017? Well, kind of. That's why I've done this video, so we're going to talk about it. Is this really a new game? What is this thing? Yes, it is. It's brand new. I just got it a month ago. So let's get into the backstory, huh? So the first Shubibinman game came out on the PC Engine, which is the Japanese TurboGrafx 16. It was a 2D side-scrolling platformer, as you would imagine for the hardware, and it was crap. It sucked. It's an awful game. It's a total shit game. I mean, the control is loose, the jumping is floaty, the bosses are cheap as all get out. I mean, it was crap. Even by the standards at that time, there's no way in the world anybody could have possibly thought that it was somehow a legitimate game. Well, to be fair, it did have one good thing going for it. The music was done by a group who called themselves Goblin Sound. They did a lot of soundtracks for Masaya and some for Seta's arcade games at the time. They must have been technical wizards because they managed to make a sound driver on the TurboGrafx that had really strong kick and snare drums. The percussion was really strong, and not a whole lot of TurboGrafx games can do that. And the songs themselves were great too. The game did have awesome music, I'll give it that. So it had one redeeming quality, but yeah, it was shit. For some crazy reason, they decided to make sequels. So there was Shubibinman 2 and 3. Shubibinman 2 actually came to America. It was called Shockman. It's definitely a lot better than the first one. Still not an extraordinary platformer, but it's worth having. The third one was on the TurboGrafx CD, so it had the boost in music quality, as you could imagine. This time I think it was actually a pretty good platformer, a little too easy, but a worthwhile game. For the second two games, they didn't have Goblin Sound do the music. They got in Koji Hayama, who's a bit famous for doing the music in the xChLAuChi series, what I've always lovingly referred to as the gay shooters. Actually, I happen to think that Shubibinman 3 is probably his best work ever. So let's switch gears for a minute. Do you guys remember back when, early on in the 16-bit era, or part of the way through the 16-bit era, there were services like the Sega Channel and X-Band that were dipping into, kind of like modem online gameplay where you could download games at home for a service fee? Well, in Japan, Nintendo actually had something quite similar for the Super Nintendo called the ScHlAuChi for the Super Famicom. This was a satellite broadcasting service where people would pay a monthly service fee, and then they would have games broadcast to their system, kind of like cable TV. A lot of the games were just kind of remixes of games that already existed, or kind of like text-based adventure games. Nothing that gets me all that excited. But as it happens, there was an exclusive Shubibinman game made for the ScHlAuChi called Shubibinman Zero, and this was a full-scale action game. Now, in modern times, let's take a look at a company called Columbus Circle. This is a Japanese company that releases mostly peripherals for the retro gaming systems. As it turns out, they've also published a few modern games on the Famicom. Most of them are just actually more like music players. They're not like real games. They just are a medium for people to kind of get their 8-bit game compositions out. And that's all fine and dandy. There was one that was kind of had a real game in it called Kira Kira Star Night. It was also very basic. But I really respect the fact that they're trying to release modern games on retro systems. Somehow or other, they managed to get the licensing rights to the data for Shubibinman Zero, and they've released it in physical form. So it's not exactly a new game. It was released a long time ago, developed and released a long time ago, during the Super Nintendo's era. But we now finally have an official physical copy here, and this is really nice. So, we're quite a ways into this video. How about the actual gameplay of Shubibinman Zero? It's halfway between a platformer and a single-plane side-scrolling beat-em-up. It's such that you won't take damage if you just touch the enemies. You have to actually get hit by their attack in order to take damage. Actually, as it turns out, this game is really fun. I'm having a blast playing it. To be honest, I bought it kind of just doing it to support the industry. I just figured, well, there's a company releasing a modern 16-bit game. I need to, support them and buy a new copy. But this is a legitimate addition to the Super Nintendo lineup. It's really fun. It just plays smooth. It just feels good to get into. The control is good and it plays well. It's simple, but it doesn't get boring. They do start adding in some actual more platforming feeling towards partway through the game. The music kicks ass. Not every level has an individual original song. They do kind of recycle some music, but in one level they'll have several sections with several different songs. So there's still a legitimate number of songs. It's actually two-player at the same time. That rules. And you have a cooperative attack, to where you have a charge shot where you can shoot the beam, the Shubi beam, and if your partner shoots you and then you shoot your Shubi beam straight afterwards, it'll do a super attack that's very strong, very useful for bosses. So I've not beat the game yet. Can only get to level 4, but I'm having a blast playing it. I'm really glad I got it. That's great. Do I have any complaints about the game? I don't have any complaints about the actual game itself, but I have one huge complaint about the packaging. Now basically, Columbus Circle didn't have to develop the game. Their only job was just to give it a proper packaging. Well, somehow they managed to screw that up pretty badly. So take a look close at the box here. I'm going to close this up for you actually. Can you see that there are spaces where they've kept the box open on the lid right here? What this does is ensures that the box stays closed really tight once it's actually closed. And the problem is, it's impossible to open without smashing the shit out of the lid once you've got it completely closed because of these slits. Actually, Konami's Famicom games mostly employ this model, and they had the exact same problem. They piss me off to no end because you can't open them without smashing the shit out of the lid. And as you know, we're hardcore retro gamers. We're trying to keep our games in good condition. The only solution to this problem is to not completely close the box. You have to leave it open a couple millimeters like this. And I have to do that with all my old Konami Famicom games. Columbus Circle, what were you thinking? You guys should be hardcore retro gamers if you're putting out modern games on retro systems. Did nobody go and attempt to open this box when you made it? Come on, we've had 30 years to figure this out. But it still kicks ass that they published a Super Famicom game in the year 2017. And they've actually got Masaya's licensing. It says their name on the box. That's pretty damn awesome. Columbus Circle, I'm hoping that you guys put out Jelly Boy 2 next, another game that never got released on the Super Nintendo even though the development was completely finished. That one might be a little trickier since it's developed and probably still owned by Sony, but I think it can be done. Alright guys, so that's all for this episode. Thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed what you watched, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I'll see you again next time.